What's up, Headspaces? VJ, the brother from the ancient mother, all the time, every day, all day. Headspace Conversations. Another GOAT series. Now this one is monumental. It's gigantic, it's monolith. Ongela makama kumshileyo that allude to greatness and massive capacity. We decided to do something a little bit different than it is.
Yeah.
We decided to call ourselves out for being hypocrites. Because we realized Wuti, throughout the dialogue of the GOAT episodes, we've been talking about rappers. So really, it hasn't been a discussion about hip-hop. It's been a discussion about rap. And perhaps, as hip-hop heads, we need to remind ourselves that that's what we are. Hip-hop heads. Not rap heads. Not pop culture heads. Hip-hop has elements, and these elements all have practitioners who have worked to levels where they have contributed to the growth and the development of the movement TDT hip-hop apa in South Africa. So if we're talking GOAT MCs, why can we not talk GOAT breakdancers? Why can we not talk GOAT DJs? Why can we not talk GOAT producers? Why can we not talk GOAT entrepreneurs? Why does greatness have to be limited to the capacity of the rapper? Hip-hop culture is to such an extent that we think the measure of hip-hop excellence is rapping? Hell no. So like I said, Clay episode, we decided to call ourselves out for being hypocrites and say, actually, we've been
Yeah.
So it's about time we give credit where it's due to the OGs. I want to talk about probably the most supreme GOAT of all GOATs. And I don't know why it never dawned to us. We really were being very rapidly rap about this conversation. Okay, I almost said motherfucking. Let me respect the name. Dion Daniels, known to us as the Grandmaster Ready D. Over 30 plus years of hip-hop practice, activism, and work put to use. And I'm not here to brag about years, because we know that the measure of greatness is not necessarily in how long somebody's been doing something. It's what they've been doing in the space of that time. This is one of the most difficult GOAT series to do because, my God, does this man have accolade upon accolade, achievement upon achievement. But I want to start with the myth, the man, the legend. Dion Daniels, born in District 6, the famed urban area settled by black people who are politically known as colored people. A populace of people living in this area, enjoying jubilant, vibrant culture, expressing the diverse experiences of what it was like to become the South Africans in the making. Because South Africa is very much something that we're all making up as we go along. It was a project created by colonialists, and now we find ourselves in the context of that. Anyways, flash forward, Group Areas Act. White people want to drive people out of their homes because they see fit that certain places and certain spaces must be theirs to establish power, force, and to be able to aggress people outside of places they called homes. Dion Daniels' family is one of those that was forcefully removed from District 6. He grows the rest of his childhood in Mitchell's Plain. Growing up in Mitchell's Plain, he's pretty much exposed to the typical early 70s to late 80s dynamic of growing up in South Africa as a young black youth in the urban areas. The vibrancy is to play with the body. The vibrant, I don't mean masturbation. I mean like kids actually moving their bodies, being acrobatic, being expressive, having fun. Now from being children and simply realizing the potential of what the mind and the body is capable of in a system that tells you constantly that you are nothing. Your black body is nothing, your black mind is nothing. Comes an opportunity. And I found one thing very interesting through the story. Hip-hop's connection to South Africa comes through commerce and industry. It is people who have unique opportunities to travel abroad. And in their traveling abroad, they take artifacts of American culture, including hip-hop vinyls and cassettes, and they bring them back home. And I think that's a conversation in its own. This migration and this mode of communication, how the economy played a major role in certain people who had the ability. Now Reddy D talks about having certain people in his area who worked basically in the marine space. And they would travel through boats overseas, come back with vinyls, set shit off, and they would play some of the latest stuff. And one of the things that caught his attention as a kid was hearing this song which he remembers from a sample that his fathers used to play. And he heard this song go, I said a hip, a hop, a hippie. He heard none other than Rapper's Delight by the Sugar Hill Gang. And tracks like rappers like Curtis Blow. So basically we're talking about prototype era hip hop. Now from his account he says the first time he heard this music, something just clicked. There was this connection between something which was vaguely familiar through what he knew from the soul and the funk and the jazz that his father used to play, dressed up in something that was hip and happening for his generation to relate to. Now this is his encounter with the sound. So obviously as they hear these raps, they start mimicking these raps. A young Dion Daniels is now growing an affinity to wanting to write a couple of raps, wanting to express what it's like being a colored boy in the middle of apartheid South Africa, navigating your identity, navigating your blackness, right? Now in the middle of all of that, he meets an encounter with a very important individual by the name of Shaneen Arifdeen. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. These names can get a little complicated. Now Shaneen is the son of a well-known jazz artist, and because of that, man's got a studio. His dad has a studio, and through Shaneen's friendship with Dion, an affinity of actually making music is born. They start to play around with the drum machines. They start to look around their space. They start to really experiment with the turntables. They start to see the possibility of what they could do with the tools that they have around them. And it is from this duo that Prophets of the City was born. Add on other members as the group evolved. Ishmael, who's that nigga from Boom Shaka? That dude.
Yeah.
They started as dancers. And basically, a lot of people were discovered to have more than one capability. Prophets of the City was a family, a team of people who came from diverse backgrounds, informed by this very hyper-militant, pro-black hip-hop. These niggas were clearly imaged in the likeness of Public Enemy and NWA. This was the era. Reddy D talks about a club by the name of Club Teasers. Cape Townians probably know that. It was this club which was very important, white club, to the culture capital of the city at that time. And it was a place where a lot of black and colored youth would sneak in and make their way inside that club, creating this mixed milieu of people who could express themselves in a way that was practically illegal, but for their own power and benefit, through styles of music which were beginning to develop at that time. Now Teasers was really a club which played almost everything from like industrial house to your pop to your funk. But something happened in the transition of the club where it kind of had a whole revamp and became known as the bass, where it emphasized more on the hip hop. And when this began, the culture started to really move. And as the myth goes, Reddy D was born, coming into stages, becoming this turntablist, practicing each and every day, also a b-boy. Now mind you, this affinity to Teasers all started because the story goes that they used to break on the white side of the train station because that's where the smooth and cleaner floors were and it was easier to break. So they'd be watched by white people, they'd interact with white kids, and it created a dynamic for them to intermingle with other parts of the culture, with other people and other people's experiences. And I want to emphasize this because the misconception is always hip-hop is a black man's art form and a black man's culture. If you look at the earliest pictures in the Bronx, you will see that the inner city of New York was a vibrant hub of Italian kids, of Latino kids, of African American kids. So yes, hip-hop was born from the lifeblood of oppressed people. And oppressed people fundamentally define black people. But don't get it twisted. Hip-hop was not and never was a black culture. It's for everybody, always has been, always will be. Let's go back to the story. Even in the South African context, hip-hop has always been born in the context of coming together. We've always been trying to wangle around these structures set for us by people who want to divide us and come together. That's the spirit. So this is the first chapter of Ready D's story.
DJ Ready D from the province of the city!
It got to be so damn tough.
The second chapter of Ready D's story really entails how the man is practically like a single-handed Voltron force of SA hip-hop. He starts off as a breakdancer. He evolves into experimenting with turntablism, literally practicing one of the most safeguarded art forms in the hip-hop culture. Still doing it at his prime, showing us the tradition of literally breaking beats, scratching, spinning, and turning records on their heads. This man practices an element of gymnastics, aesthetics, creativity, and badass DJing all in the same breath. Now add on top of that the fact that he's also a music producer, a radio presenter, somebody who has made sure that he's a mainstay of giving artists platforms, being part and parcel of the growth and evolution of Cape Town hip-hop and South African hip-hop in general. I say South African hip-hop because he was Fat Joe's DJ back when Fat Joe had that late night show. He got so into the mix that he ended up being Will Smith's DJ while Will was on tour and doing his thing in South Africa. Ready D is decorated. And I mention all of these accomplishments to say that we have a living, breathing giant in our midst. Somebody whose wisdom, somebody whose techniques, somebody whose knowledge, somebody whose insights, and somebody whose ideas are a tome and a valuable archive to SA hip-hop. So I ask the question, why isn't there more Ready D awareness? Why aren't the younger generation being tuned into the fact that at the central point of the hip-hop culture was DJing before the MCing? And as a result, if any rapper wants to call themselves great, they need to at least get the approval of the Grandmaster. This is somebody who's been able to understand the evolution from militant hip-hop revolutionary hip hop, the kind of hip hop that is really directed towards capitalistic intent. Somebody who understands hip hop in all of its guises is what I'm trying to get to. Now, my voice is dying, mainly because I was drunk last night, but also because I am passionate about Ready D, y'all. And this passion comes from the fact that South African hip hop has a story that begins very controversially, either in Cape Town or in Johannesburg. We have two meccas with seeds being planted in the ground of the fertile soil of both places. But if we talk about Cape Town, the narrative of how the first song to be spat on a record in Afrikaans was literally POC's joint. POC was able to become authentic, to still do something which was American inspired, tour the world with it, find the affinity of great acts like Quincy Jones, where they were invited to perform at very prestigious events. Mind you, their profile rose up so high that they were set to perform for Matiba's inauguration, but when their content was screened, that shit was cancelled. So not only were these niggas sought after, but they had the balls to speak against the so-called New South Africa and critique at the backbone of what we were becoming, right in its nascent stages, right when it was beginning. So if we're here to talk about awareness, if we're here to talk about activism, if we're here to talk about all of the elements of hip-hop, Grandmaster Ready D is all of those in the body of one man. You can't mention the story of Ready D without talking about the story of so many other people, including Lance Deb, who deserves his own episode. Because Ready D is also at the helm of being part of South Africa's literal first successful rap group. I'm talking on a global level. These niggas made history, and this history is not resonated enough in modern day times. Is it because they're colored? Is it because they made a music which can now be considered outdated stylistically? My question is, why are we not acknowledging the people who took the first steps to lay the foundation to make what we do possible right now? In a nutshell, the undoubtable impact that Ready D has played in shaping and in defining what South African hip hop can be and is, cannot be doubted. Ready D is definitely the greatest of all time. Now I can go on and on with the story, but I'm more interested in what you know about the Grandmaster. Anybody with some knowledge, anybody who wants to contribute to building this great story, anybody who might even have the audacity to dispute me, holla at me. But I'm here to say Ready D represents our beginning, and possibly he might represent our end, and I'm here to give him his flowers while he's still alive. Salute to the Grandmaster, DJ, turntablist, producer, all-in-one extraordinaire hip-hop Grandmaster, SM Mzansi Africa, Ready D.
Yeah.